Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Michael Crick here in Liverpool at the Labour Party conference. Now more on what the future could look like if there's no Brexit deal. From travel abroad to protection for food products, a tranche of new documents have been released revealing the government's contingency plans. Business and farming leaders have already warned of devastating effects and an explosion of red tape. Our business editor, Siobhan Kennedy, is at Stansted Airport right now. Siobhan.
Well, John, as you said, I'm here at Stansted Airport, just outside of London, where 85% of the flights here go in and out of Europe. Mostly low-cost airlines packed with British and European holidaymakers. Now, those flights right now don't need any special permission to land and take off. But today, in its latest technical no-deal papers, the government gave warning that there would be no automatic permission to fly in and out of the EU, and that UK flight safety certificates would not be recognised by the EU. Now, it hopes to strike a multilateral deal on both these areas, but concedes there will be some disruption in the event that doesn't happen. Now, earlier I spoke to one of the bosses here at Stansted and some of the passengers to gauge their reaction to today's warning. What are the biggest obstacles still that have prevented you from already signing some kind of deal?
Yeah, we would like to see this clarified as soon as possible, but we recognise this is being sort of tied up in some of the wider political negotiations that are going on at the moment. But the EU and the UK, I think, recognise what needs to be done, and I think the technical notices set out a very clear plan for doing that. And we think that could be done with the right commitment on both sides very quickly.
So what you're essentially saying is you can get on with it, but politics is getting in the way?
Yeah, to a degree, it is, and I think those technical, practical steps do need to be taken very quickly. What
happens if you can't get a deal? You say you're confident you can, but what happens then?
What happens then? Well,
Flights, your planes out there remain on the tarmac.
I think that's an extremely unlikely scenario. It's one that we can't absolutely rule out, but we think there is enough mutual interest here between the EU and the UK. There are 164 million passengers flying backwards and forwards between the UK and the EU every year. That, I think, provides enough incentive for everybody to get round the table and sort this out.
Would you book a flight for that weekend next March when we are due to leave the EU, or would you just think, no way?
No, I think I would book with confidence.
Would you book a flight for next year, post-March, when we've left the EU already? Do you have enough confidence?
No.
I wouldn't book within the European Union.
Why?
Because I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen in March. Would I book my holiday personally now? No, and I haven't booked my holiday now.
Now, John, the key word here is confidence. Aviation bosses today keen to stress that they are ready to pick up the pieces if the government can't reach a deal. They want passengers to know that everything is fine, that they are free today to book flights post-March 2019 when we leave the EU. But as you just heard from passengers there, they are extremely wary. Now, in total today, there were 25 technical notices covering a vast swathe of industries and all sorts of potential issues. For instance, pets, dogs and cats, and even the government warns our furry friend the ferret will need to see the vet 4 months before travelling to the EU in the event of a no deal. Haulage firms even being warned that they may not have the necessary permits to drive off their ferries and told to look for different routes, or use unaccompanied trailers and containers as opposed to lorries. Once again then, John, a whole load, a vast swathe of technical information for businesses on the what-if scenarios. Businesses' response, though, what they're keen to stress is the what-ifs will cost us, British business, and therefore the economy dear. So what they are pushing for, what they want to hear, is some form of agreed deal as soon as possible. John, back to you.
Siobhan Kennedy there at Stansted Airport.
Well, as we said, during the day, the government released the latest documents on what's likely to happen if the UK leaves the EU without a formal Brexit deal. One of the big subjects covered is aviation. What would happen to flights going to and departing from the EU? Let's talk to our transport correspondent, Tom Burridge, at Heathrow Airport. And Tom, what did you read into these documents today?
Well, Hugh, the government's warning that coach and bus travel to the EU could be suspended in the short term. Taking your pet to the EU would become more problematic. And if you catch a flight via an EU airport to a destination beyond, then you and your luggage could be screened a second time, essentially. A no-deal scenario basically throws up a raft of issues for the aviation industry, essentially. For example, whether an engineer certified in Britain would be qualified in the EU's eyes to service a plane. The government is essentially saying in these papers that it will recognise EU standards across the board when it comes to aviation. The problem is the EU hasn't yet said the same. I think we can, though, say that that doomsday scenario, that all EU-UK flights the day after Brexit would be grounded, is highly unlikely because the EU has already said that it would recognise put contingency measures in place to make sure that wouldn't happen and flights would keep moving. But as one industry insider put it today, these papers throw up a whole load of issues. They don't really give any surprises, but they don't offer some solutions to some of the problems either.
Tom, many thanks again. Tom Burridge, our correspondent there at Heathrow.